What if a homeless girl solving math problems in the dirt became the secret weapon behind a billionaire's son's success? What if the same child everyone called worthless was actually a genius hiding under a mango tree? And what if one unexpected discovery changed not just her life, but revealed a truth about dignity that an entire nation needed to hear? This is the story of Amina Musa, the girl who rewrote her destiny one equation at a time. Amina Musa was 12 years old when she first understood that invisibility could be a gift. She had learned this the hard way, living on the streets of Kano with her mother, Zainab, whose mind had been stolen by an illness no one bothered to name. Her father had disappeared years ago, the day Zainab's hallucinations became too much for him to bear. Since then, Amina had been both daughter and caretaker, scavenger and protector, dreamer and survivor. She slept under a broken kiosk near Sabangari Market. The smell of rotting fruit and diesel fumes was her lullaby. Her clothes were stiff with dirt, her hair matted, her feet cracked and bare. People walked past her every day as if she were part of the pavement. Worthless, they called her. Useless, a waste of space. But Amina had a secret. She was brilliant. Not in the way people expected brilliance to look. Not in clean uniforms or air-conditioned classrooms. Her brilliance lived in the shadows. She had attended school for only 2 years before the fees became impossible, but in those 2 years, she had memorized everything. Numbers, letters, patterns, sounds. Her mind was a sponge that absorbed knowledge even when her stomach was empty. Now, at 12, she wandered near schools just to hear the lessons through open windows. She listened to teachers explain fractions and grammar, then repeated the lessons to herself at night under the kiosk. She solved math problems in the sand with a stick. She wrote stories on scraps of paper she found in the market. And she dreamed, always dreamed, of the day she might sit in a real classroom again. That dream had almost come true once. Mrs. Kemi, a kind food vendor with a warm smile and a heavy Yoruba accent, had noticed Amina watching schoolchildren one afternoon. She had offered her food. Then conversation. Then hope. Mrs. Kemi began giving Amina small jobs at her stall, sweeping, carrying, cleaning. She saved money and bought Amina a second-hand uniform, books, and paid her school fees for one glorious term. Amina had walked into that classroom like she was stepping into heaven. The teachers were shocked by how quickly she learned, how she solved problems faster than children who had never missed a day. For 3 months, Amina believed her life had changed forever. Then Mrs. Kemi relocated to the UK. No warning. No goodbye. Just gone. The school sent Amina away the following week. Unpaid fees. The uniform was taken back. The books were returned. And just like that, Amina was invisible again. But this time, the streets felt colder. The hunger cut deeper. Her old sleeping spot had been claimed by another girl, one who mocked Amina for thinking she could ever be anything more than trash. Other street girls began pressuring her to join them in dangerous work, the kind that destroyed girls from the inside out. Amina refused. She would rather starve. So she did. And yet, even in starvation, even in shame, Amina kept learning. She found a new spot near Northern Crest International School, one of the most prestigious schools in Kano. It sat behind tall gates with manicured lawns and children in spotless uniforms. Amina had no business being there. But there was a mango tree just inside the fence, far enough from the main buildings that security rarely checked it. She began sneaking in during lunch breaks. From beneath that tree, she could hear the teachers through the open windows of the junior secondary classrooms. She listened to mathematics lessons, English grammar, science explanations. She copied notes in the sand with her fingers. She solved equations in her head. And for a few stolen hours each day, she felt human again. It was under that mango tree that Daniel Ibrahim found her. Daniel was the son of Alhaji Ibrahim, one of the wealthiest business magnates in northern Nigeria. He wore custom-tailored uniforms, carried the latest smartphone, and had tutors waiting for him at home. But Daniel had a problem. He was failing mathematics. His father's disappointment was a weight that pressed on his chest every morning. His teachers had tried everything. Nothing worked. That afternoon, Daniel had skipped class to sit under the mango tree and avoid another humiliating lesson. He was staring at his workbook, frustrated and defeated, when he noticed her. A girl, barefoot, filthy, crouched in the dirt. She was writing in the sand with a stick. Daniel watched her for a moment, confused. Then he saw what she was writing. Mathematics. Advanced algebra. The exact problems he had been struggling with for weeks. And she was solving them. Quickly. Effortlessly. Without hesitation. He stood and walked closer. Amina looked up, her eyes wide with fear. She thought he would call security. She thought her hiding place was over. But Daniel did not call anyone. Instead, he crouched down beside her and pointed at the sand. His voice was quiet, almost embarrassed. Can you explain that to me? Amina hesitated. She studied his face, searching for mockery, for cruelty, for the trap she had learned to expect. But all she saw was genuine curiosity. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of desperation. So she explained. She spoke softly, her voice rough from disuse, but her words were clear. She broke the problem into pieces, showing him patterns, shortcuts, logic. Daniel listened, his eyes growing wider with every sentence. When she finished, he tried the next problem himself. And for the first time in months, he got it right. He looked at her like she had just performed magic. Who are you? He asked. Amina did not answer. She stood quickly, ready to run. But Daniel raised his hand, a gesture of peace. Wait, please. Can you come back tomorrow? Amina did not trust easily. But something in his voice, something in the way he looked at her not with pity, but with respect, made her pause. She nodded once, then disappeared through a gap in the fence. The next day, she returned. And the day after that. And the day after that. Their lessons became a secret ritual. Daniel would bring his workbook, and Amina would teach him under the mango tree. His grades began to improve. His confidence grew. And for the first time in years, Amina felt like she mattered. But secrets, no matter how carefully kept, always have a way of coming to light. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon. Alhaji Ibrahim had arrived at the school unannounced, wanting to speak with Daniel's teachers about his progress. He walked across the grounds, his expensive shoes crunching on gravel, when he heard voices near the mango tree. He stopped, listened, then walked closer. What he saw made him freeze. His son, sitting in the dirt, laughing, learning, and beside him, a homeless girl with matted hair and bare feet, explaining mathematics like a seasoned teacher. Alhaji Ibrahim did not speak. He simply stood there, watching, and for reasons he could not yet name, something inside him shifted. Daniel saw his father first. The color drained from his face. He stood quickly, brushing dirt from his trousers, his mouth opening to explain, to defend, to beg. But Alhaji Ibrahim raised a hand, silencing him without a word. The older man's gaze shifted to Amina. She had not moved. She sat frozen in the dirt, her stick still clutched in her hand, her eyes locked on the ground. She knew what happened to people like her when they were caught where they did not belong. She had been chased, beaten, spat on. She expected the same now. But Alhaji Ibrahim did not shout. He did not call security. Instead, he crouched down slowly, his expensive agbada pooling in the dust, and looked at the equations written in the sand. You did this? He asked quietly. Amina nodded, barely a movement. Alhaji Ibrahim studied her for a long moment. Then he looked at his son. Daniel, is this the girl who has been helping you? Yes, Baba. Daniel's voice was tight with fear, but also with something else. Defiance. She is the reason I am passing mathematics now. She is the smartest person I have ever met. Alhaji Ibrahim turned back to Amina. What is your name? Amina Musa, sir. Her voice was so soft it was almost lost in the breeze. Where are your parents? Amina hesitated. My father left. My mother is sick. We live near Sabangari. Alhaji Ibrahim's jaw tightened. He had seen enough poverty in his lifetime to recognize the kind of sickness she was describing. He had also seen enough brilliance wasted, enough potential buried under circumstances no child could control. He stood, brushing dust from his hands. Come with me, he said. Amina did not move. She thought it was a trap. She thought she was being taken to the police, or worse. But Daniel stepped forward and offered her his hand. It is okay, he said gently. My father is not like the others. Slowly, carefully, Amina took his hand and stood. Alhaji Ibrahim led them both to his car, a gleaming black Mercedes that made Amina feel even filthier by comparison. The driver opened the door without question. Daniel climbed in first, then pulled Amina in beside him. She sat stiffly, afraid to touch anything, afraid to breathe too loudly. Take us to Sabangari, Alhaji Ibrahim instructed. The drive was silent except for the hum of the engine. Amina stared out the window, her heart pounding. She did not know what was happening. She did not know if this was rescue or ruin. When they arrived at the market, Amina directed them to the broken kiosk. Zainab was there, sitting on the ground, rocking back and forth, muttering to invisible people only she could see. Her clothes were torn. Her hair was wild. Her eyes were empty. Alhaji Ibrahim stepped out of the car and stood there, staring. Daniel stayed close to Amina, his hand still holding hers. "This is your mother?" Alhaji Ibrahim asked. "Yes, sir." He was silent for a long time. Then he turned to his driver. "Call Dr. Halima. Tell her I need her immediately. Then call my lawyer." Within hours, Zainab was being examined by one of the best psychiatrists in Kano. Amina sat in the waiting room, Daniel beside her, neither of them speaking. She did not understand what was happening. She did not dare hope. When Dr. Halima emerged, she spoke quietly to Alhaji Ibrahim. "Schizophrenia, likely untreated for years. She needs medication, therapy, long-term care. It will take time, but there is hope for improvement." Alhaji Ibrahim nodded. "Do whatever is necessary. I will cover all costs." Then he turned to Amina. "You will come home with us tonight. You will have a bed, food, and safety. Tomorrow, we begin the process of enrolling you in school. Your mother will receive the best care available. You will not go back to the streets. Do you understand?" Amina could not speak. Tears poured down her face, silent and unstoppable. She nodded. Daniel squeezed her hand. "Welcome home," he whispered. That night, Amina slept in a real bed for the first time in years. The sheets were soft. The room was quiet. And for the first time since her father left, she felt safe. But safety, she would soon learn, did not mean acceptance. Alhaji Ibrahim's family was not unanimous in their support. His wife, Hajia Fatima, was kind but cautious. She worried about what people would say, about the complications of bringing a homeless girl into their home. Their older daughter, Safia, was openly hostile. She saw Amina as a charity project, a poor girl who would never truly belong. Amina felt the tension in every glance, every whispered conversation that stopped when she entered a room. She tried to make herself small, to stay out of the way, to prove she was worth the trouble. But the weight of being unwanted was familiar. It was the same weight she had carried on the streets. Daniel noticed. He made a point of including her in everything, of sitting with her at meals, of defending her when Safia made cutting remarks. But even his kindness could not erase the invisible line that separated her from the rest of the family. The legal process to adopt her began. Court dates were set. Social workers interviewed her. The media caught wind of the story, and suddenly, Amina's face was on the news. The homeless girl taken in by a billionaire. The rags-to-riches tale that made people feel good about themselves. But Amina did not feel good. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like an animal in a zoo. At school, it was worse. She was enrolled at Northern Crest International School, the same school where she had hidden under the mango tree. But now, she sat in the classroom. She wore the uniform. She carried the books. And everyone stared. Some students were kind, curious, impressed by her intelligence. But others whispered. They pointed. They laughed. The homeless girl who thinks she belongs here. The beggar pretending to be one of us. Amina kept her head down. She focused on her work. And when the teachers called on her, she answered correctly every single time. Her grades were flawless. Her mind was sharp. And slowly, grudgingly, even her harshest critics had to admit that she was not pretending. She belonged. Daniel stayed by her side through it all. Their friendship deepened into something unshakable. He was the brother she had never had, the family she had chosen. And she was the person who reminded him that privilege was not the same as worth. Months passed. Zainab began to improve under Dr. Halima's care. The medication stabilized her. The therapy helped her recognize Amina again. It was slow, painful progress, but it was progress. And then came the spelling bee. Northern Crest International School entered Daniel and Amina as representatives for the National Spelling Bee Championship. It was a prestigious competition, broadcast live, watched by millions. Amina was terrified, not of the words, but of the attention, of the cameras, of the inevitable moment when someone would recognize her as the homeless girl and reduce her to nothing but her past. But Daniel believed in her. So she competed. Round after round, she and Daniel advanced. The words grew harder. The pressure mounted. And then, in the final round, Daniel stumbled. He misspelled a word, his face flushing with embarrassment as the buzzer sounded. It was down to Amina and one other competitor. The final word was announced. Prestidigitation. Amina closed her eyes. She thought of the mango tree, of the sand, of the stick in her hand, of every stolen lesson, every whispered equation, every moment she had refused to believe she was worthless. She opened her eyes and began to spell. Prestidigitation. The bell rang. The crowd erupted. And Amina Musa became the youngest national spelling bee champion in Nigeria's history. But as the cameras flashed and the applause roared, Amina felt something else. A quiet, creeping dread. Because she knew what came next. Fame. Exposure. And with it, the voices that would tear her down. The headlines came fast and loud. Homeless girl becomes national champion. From streets to stardom. Billionaire's adopted daughter defies all odds. Amina's face was everywhere. Newspapers, television, social media. Her story was shared, celebrated, dissected. And then came the other voices. They started in comment sections, anonymous and cruel. She only won because of pity. They felt sorry for the gutter girl. She does not belong in that family. She is using them. Once a beggar, always a beggar. Amina read every word. She knew she should not, but she could not stop herself. Each comment was a knife, sharp and precise, cutting into the parts of her that still believed she was worthless. Daniel found her one evening, sitting alone in the library, staring at her phone. Her eyes were red. "You have to stop reading those," he said gently. "They are right," Amina whispered. "I do not belong here. I am just pretending." Daniel sat beside her. "You earned everything you have. Your intelligence, your success, your place in this family. That is not pretending. That is surviving." But Amina could not shake the feeling that the world was waiting for her to fail, to prove that girls like her could never truly escape where they came from. Then the letter arrived. It was addressed to Amina Musa Ibrahim. The adoption had been finalized months earlier, and her new name still felt strange on her tongue. She opened the envelope carefully, her hands trembling. Inside was an acceptance letter. The Global Scholars Program. A full scholarship to a prestigious STEM boarding school in the United States. Mentorship from professors at Harvard, MIT, and Oxford. She had ranked first among over 18,000 African applicants. Amina read the letter 3 times before she believed it was real. Alhaji Ibrahim wept when she showed him. Hajiya Fatima embraced her for the first time, truly embraced her, without hesitation. Even Safia, who had spent months resenting her presence, smiled and said, "You deserve this." But Daniel was quiet. He was proud, Amina could see that. But there was something else in his eyes. Sadness. Loss. That night, they sat together under the stars in the courtyard. Daniel spoke first. "I am going to miss you. I will come back," Amina said. "I know. But it will not be the same. You are going to do incredible things, Amina. You are going to change the world. And I am just going to be here." Amina turned to him, her voice fierce. "You are the reason I am here. You saw me when I was invisible. You believed in me when no one else did. You gave me a family. Do not ever think you are just anything." Daniel smiled, but the sadness did not leave his eyes. The months before her departure were a blur. Preparations, farewells, interviews. Amina visited her mother often. Zainab was better now, clearer, more present. She recognized Amina every time. She held her hand and hummed old Hausa lullabies that Amina had not heard since she was small. One afternoon, as Amina sat beside her, Zainab spoke. Her voice was soft but steady. "I am proud of you, my daughter. I am sorry I could not give you the life you deserved." Amina shook her head, tears streaming. "You gave me everything, Mama. You kept me alive. You taught me to survive." Zainab smiled, "A fragile, beautiful thing. You taught yourself, Amina. You always did." When the day came for Amina to leave for America, the entire family gathered at the airport. Hajiya Fatima gave her a Quran and a prayer mat. Safia gave her a bracelet, handmade, delicate. Alhaji Ibrahim gave her a letter, sealed, with instructions not to open it until she felt lost. And Daniel gave her a small notebook. Inside, on the first page, he had written, "Never forget the girl under the mango tree. She is the strongest person I know." Amina boarded the plane with tears in her eyes and hope in her heart. The years abroad were transformative. Amina excelled in every subject. She studied neuropsychiatry, driven by her mother's illness, determined to understand the mind, to heal the broken, to give others the second chance her mother had received. She graduated top of her class. She published research. She spoke at conferences. And through it all, she carried the memory of the mango tree, the sand, the stick, the hunger. She never let herself forget. When she returned to Nigeria, she was Dr. Amina Musa Ibrahim, one of the youngest neuropsychiatrists in the country. But she did not come back for accolades or fame. She came back with a mission. She co-founded the Hope Blossom Foundation, an organization dedicated to mental health support, treatment, and family reunification. They opened clinics in Kano, Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt. They provided free care to those who could not afford it. They trained counselors, educated communities, and fought the stigma that had destroyed so many lives. Thousands of people received help because of her work. Families were reunited. Lives were saved. And then, one evening, Amina received a call. It was Daniel. His voice was thick with emotion. "You need to come home. Now." Amina rushed to the Ibrahim family house, her heart pounding. She found Daniel in the courtyard, standing beside someone she almost did not recognize. Zainab, fully present, fully healed, her eyes clear, her smile real. "Mama," Amina whispered. Zainab opened her arms, and Amina fell into them, sobbing. They held each other for a long time, neither of them speaking. Words were not necessary. Later that evening, the family gathered for dinner. Zainab sat at the table, humming softly, the same lullaby she had sung years ago. Amina and Daniel sat side by side, their hands clasped under the table. Alhaji Ibrahim raised his glass. "To family," he said. "To second chances. To the girl who reminded us all what strength truly looks like." Everyone drank. And in that moment, Amina felt something she had not felt in years. Wholeness. But there was one more truth that needed to be revealed. Days later, Amina was sorting through her mother's belongings, items that had been stored during her years of treatment. She found an old, faded envelope tucked inside a worn Bible. Inside was a letter, written in her father's hand, dated years ago. Amina read it slowly, her hands shaking. The letter was an apology. Her father had not abandoned them out of cruelty or shame. He had left to find work in another country, to send money for Zainab's treatment. But he had died in an accident before he could return. His employer had kept the money, never sending it to his family. He had loved them. He had tried to save them. He had simply run out of time. Amina sank to the floor, the letter clutched in her hands. All these years, she had hated him. She had believed he was selfish, cowardly, unforgiving. But he had been trying to save them all along. She showed the letter to Zainab. Her mother wept. But this time, the tears were not born of madness. They were born of grief, of understanding, of closure. That night, Amina sat in her room, holding the torn notebook she had kept from the streets. The pages were filled with her scribbles, her equations, her stolen lessons. She had carried it with her everywhere, a reminder of who she had been, of how far she had come. She opened it to the first page and wrote, "My name is Amina Musa Ibrahim. I was a homeless girl who survived. I was a student who dreamed. I was a daughter who forgave. And I am a woman who will never forget that every child, no matter where they come from, is worthy of love, of dignity, of a chance to become who they were meant to be." She closed the notebook and placed it on her shelf, beside her medical degree, beside the championship trophy, beside the letter from her father. And she smiled, because she finally understood. Her story was not about escaping her past. It was about honoring it. It was about transforming pain into purpose, suffering into strength, invisibility into impact. She was no longer the girl under the mango tree, but she would never stop being her either. Sometimes, the world teaches us that worth is measured by where we come from, by what we own, by who knows our name. But the truth is quieter, deeper, harder to see. Worth is not given by circumstance. It is revealed by resilience. It is proven by kindness. It is built in the choices we make when no one is watching, in the dignity we protect when the world calls us worthless. Amina's story reminds us that every act of compassion creates a ripple, that every child has genius waiting to be seen, and that the greatest transformations begin not with wealth or status, but with the simple, radical belief that every human life matters. Love does not erase the past. It redeems it. And sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is remember where we came from, so we never forget who still needs a hand reaching down into the dirt. Like, subscribe, share, and comment the lesson you learned.